can see with LinkedIn already. LinkedIn is not as go live anyway. And here we go. LinkedIn has a problem already.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Sorry for those small technical issues, guys. So, guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning from. I am super excited about this conversation today with Claude Silver, who is Chief Heart Officer at VaynerMedia. But more importantly, and this is key here, a tremendous, incredible, good human being and emotional optimist. Claude like to call herself Emotional Optimism, and her purpose is to unlock that in all of us. I tend to personally call Claude empathy warrior, but I love the term emotional optimism. But first and foremost, Claude, thank you very much for being so generous with your time and sharing it with me and my listeners today.
Thank you, Ralph. Of course, I appreciate you asking.
So really the question that I'm really curious about is, what does that mean to you, being an emotional optimist? And what's the story behind it and the purpose of your life?
Yes, of course. Okay, well, let's start with the purpose of my life, because then I think that that leads into emotional optimist or an emotional warrior, because I think they're kind of one and the same. You're right, in many ways. The purpose of my life is to facilitate growth and change in people and teams and human beings, really. And the way I go about doing that is through what I call joyful service, being of service. I happen to be a glass full type of person. I operate on blind faith, I would say, most of the time. And the thing about emotional optimism is it's not denying the emotion. It's not saying no to it or stuffing it or negating it. It's accepting it, understanding it, and working with the emotion to come around it and see a positive, a silver lining, if you will. You know, the fact that we as human beings can get through just about anything. So the emotional optimism is feeling your feelings, identifying them, feeling them, whatever you need to do, give them a hug, but then move through that so that we can reignite ourselves and go into this place of thriving rather than surviving. Yeah.
So there are two key words that you've mentioned, and when I reflect on my own story, you've just mentioned reigniting it and not denying the emotions. I wasn't raised to be empathetic in a way that it's a thing, it's a word. In fact, I had to discover it in my early 30s almost, that exact meaning that the word even exists. I wasn't trained as a manager to bring the emotions into my work. In fact, we were told one company said, you just leave things outside of this doors. When you're walking in here, you're an employee. And so I was growing, believing in that the emotions are not part of my work. I have to be professional. And for those who listening right now, perhaps you are from this part of the Europe that I am. I'm Polish. We are raised and grow to be professional in the workplace, not to be emotional in the workplace. You're teaching, what you're sharing, and your life purpose is to change it. Now, today I know that that's the way to go. I had to crush and burn and reinvent and like you said, reignite yourself. But I wish I met you, Claude, when I started my management journey, to really embrace it from the get-go. So for those who are starting it or want to reignite themselves, where would we start to break away from the shackles of being professional and all those things that we're told to be in the workplace that are not necessarily right?
Yeah, I mean, a person needs to want to show more of themselves in the workplace. You can't force that, right? A person needs to want to change their behavior. A person wants to change their behavior because they realize who they are at work is only half of them. They have a shield up and they want to make the change. And the first three things to do is, while you recognize that, soften a bit. Allow people in, allow people to get to know you. And that, by the way, is just called connection. A real connection. Allow people to get to know what you like, what you do on the weekend, how it makes you feel when you have success at work.
Mm-hmm.
Just allow people to get to know you. That's the first thing I would say.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is do some listening around you. See what other people are doing around you.
Mm.
Listening, by the way, is with our ears, but it's also with our eyes. So many things are unsaid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say listening is a real big part of it. And then the other thing is the authenticity, just getting real, and
Mm.
what I found way back when I was just starting out, and there were people that were very shackled and shielded, I would say, is there was always one, two, or three people that wanted to get closer, that
Yeah.
wanted to connect in a more authentic way. You're
Mm-hmm.
never, I will say this, it is going to be a very rare day when you're the only person that wants to connect in a real way in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's human nature.
It is.
It's human nature to connect. We belong with one another. And so the
Mm.
belonging with one another requires authenticity. It requires vulnerability. It requires having emotional courage to reach out and say, hi, my name's Claude. I'm a working mom. I hear you're a working parent. Let's talk about that. It's really hard right now.
Mm-hmm.
Types of things, So the recognition, the vulnerability, listening, observing what's going on, and then the authenticity. Those are the things I would say. And there's many other things to do. I don't really necessarily think it's a step-by-step thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. What works for you is what works for you, and go and do it. But for sure, these are some of the qualities that you might want to start looking for, bring into your own behavior.
Yes, and as you've mentioned, they all resonate with me. But almost to each point that you've raised, there is attached a belief or a certain assumptions that we follow through, and kind of like, Claude, what do you mean soften it a bit? I'm the manager. I'm here to make sure that the job is done. Showing a weakness, it's definitely not my thing that I'm supposed to do,
Yeah.
right? At no point I was told in my life to show the weakness. I was told to the opposite.
Yeah.
And because you believe in it, then your demeanor and your behavior follows with it. So what are the benefits of, as you call it, softening up a little bit more within working environment?
Yeah. The way I'm going to answer that is, tell me what the benefit is of not softening. Tell me what the benefit is of being a robot, being stoic, holding it all in. Tell me what that benefit is, because I have a feeling that over time, you're going to erupt inside.
Yes.
You're going to erupt
yes.
outside. So that's how I'm going to answer that really question, is like, okay, well, how's it working the opposite way?
Mm-hmm.
It's not our normal. It's not normal behavior, human behavior, to keep people away. It's just not. We learn that. We learn that over time in maybe our childhood, maybe our adolescence, maybe just by seeing how other people are in the workplace and no one's going to share.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not I believe
right.
that there's a healthier way to be. There's a happier way to be.
There certainly is. If I may share with you guys, my career really is divided in certain points. Now, joining Hard Rock Cafe was a pivotal point for me, because for the first time I felt like I belonged, and you've mentioned it, the belonging part. And prior to that, I was an employee in and out, being professional, shielding myself, getting job done, and just not being an emotional, not expressing myself. I'm just there to clock in, clock out, and earn my bucks. And then through Hard Rock Cafe and the promise that I want to create the same environment for others, I discovered that self-awareness. And that was the key moment for me, because I've learned that I don't have to hold my own emotions. It's okay to talk about them, and it's okay to experience them in the first place, as you've mentioned, but also to phrase them and to have a conversations around it. There's nothing wrong with having a day of what might be perceived by some weakness. For me, it's no longer that. In the past, it was a weekness, to showing my emotions, to show that I'm weak. Sure. I'm not here weak because it's supposed to be the manager, right? So I totally resonate. And I can say from my own experience and journey that this genuinely does work. And I can't tell when things changed for me. It was a gradual process, but I know those were these pivotal moments, like joining Hard Rock Cafe was one of those. And I'm curious to hear, have you had some certain points in your career that changed the way you approach the work, or Claude always have been that type of person?
No. I mean, well, I've always been me. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been me, and appreciative of the connection and happy to connect with people. Now, but there have definitely been times in my life where I noticed in the workplace, you went to work,
Mm-hmm.
you had a good time, made some friends, maybe went out for drinks with a couple of them, but then you really had your own life over here.
Mm-hmm.
Very separate. And I would say those are, in probably the early 2000s, dating myself a bit, when no one asked us how we felt at work. My generation, no one really asked us. So we didn't really tell anyone. And it's just interesting, because if someone would have asked, and if someone would have shown their own vulnerability, maybe we would have opened up a little bit more. But yes, there's definitely been times where I would say, kind of shielded or sheltered myself.
Mm-hmm.
Put my head down. I did the work in front of me. I was always that type of person, and made friends. But I had another life over here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so incredible as I matured, as time went on, that I became more comfortable integrating both of those lives together, so that I can just be me.
All the time. It's tiresome to switch between personas and making sure I behave in a certain way. And we'll talk about feedback later on for sure.
Yes.
But you can sense it when people providing a feedback, that there's two different versions of that person, even three. There's a manager, there is you, and there is a person who shares the feedback. We'll talk about it a little bit later, because what you've mentioned as well is that nobody told us to be a little bit more vulnerable. And I've lost account how often I've heard it from managers. I'm not a social worker here. And actually, I'm not saying that you are a social worker, but you have a moral obligation, not the job. You have a moral obligation. That's how I view myself as a manager in the past. And again, sending with the feedback, it's not your job to share it. It's not your job to have those conversations, and it's not your job to ask certain questions. It's your moral obligation
1,000%
towards another human being. That's the way I like to phrase it. And I hope we all start viewing things that way, that this is my job or this is not my job. It's got nothing to do with your job, my friend.
I have only applause for you saying that, because it's absolutely right. It's a moral obligation. When you step into the role of being a leader of people, managing people, it is your responsibility to take care of them. It is your responsibility to observe, to listen, to take action. It is your responsibility to turn them into the best they can possibly be. That is the job. And I agree with you tenfold.
Thank you. I'm always interested, and even recently I've seen posts of yours about feedback and the term of feedback, that we're using the word feedback, and I was applauding you as I was watching it, because the one thing that I always say is, how is that possible that we never go to our partners and say, "I've got some negative feedback, constructive criticisms for you"? We don't go to our kids. You don't go to Shalom and says, "I've got some positive feedback for you." And then you move into sharing. We're having a conversation because we care about these people and we want the best. And I believe the intention is very similar in the workplace, but it just flips on its head, and it's become a professional thing. And hey, I've got some feedback for you to share, right? And it just becomes this like, why do we not connecting those two things and blending, as you've mentioned earlier on, of you becoming the person who in a personal life in the workplace? I believe the language and the feedback also has to blend into a conversation, because we just want to help another human being.
Yeah. You know what, Raf? I think one of the phrases that's missing in the workplace is co-creation. We're co-creating an experience together. We're co-creating a work, a project, the output, a product together.
Yeah.
We're co-creating the culture together. Co-creating. Each of us has the same amount of responsibility I believe, even in the manager employee role, because the employee also needs to show up. The manager can't reach into the employee's brain and take everything out, right? As we were
Mm.
saying in the first question, behavior change is very personal. You can show someone, you can inspire someone, you can help them, I think you'd be a happier person this way, but at the end of the day, you're never going to change someone.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go into it as this agreement, it's an agreement, shake hands. And you're just co-creating something, and that's pretty cool. That's pretty
Very.
cool. Yeah.
That's very cool. You know what I tend to call it. We tend to sign this professional contract. When we hire someone, we sign the contract, and we just carry on that way. What I like to view it as is signing a social contract here.
Mm-hmm.
Simply between me and you. It is, as you mentioned, it's not my job, it's not your job. It's just literally just us, and then me and you, or us together here, creating this piece of work or this project, and really making this world a better place. And work happens to be a tool for it. And that's just one of the tools that we have, and has a real impact in the real world, versus viewing it as I need to do this, you're working on this project, this is my project, this is what I've done.
Yeah.
Everyone has an input here.
Agree. Yeah, we're speaking the same language. Absolutely. So we need to evolve.
100% certain. But one of the barriers that, if I look back in my management career, when I listen to managers right now, even up to a few weeks ago, I had a certain conversation with one person, and the same language was, I don't want to be seen as a weak person. I don't want them to see me being weak. And when I think about bringing emotional intelligence into the workplace, if I'm thinking about softening up, as you mentioned, and be a bit more vulnerable, one of my concerns would be, what if it becomes my weakness? What if people will take advantage of this is who I am, how I'm leading? How do we make sure that we don't turn it into our weakness and something that was going to work against all of us? How do you balance that yourself?
Yeah. As I'm listening to you, all I hear is, within that question, there's so much fear and insecurity. And how do I balance that? Is by providing safety to people, removing the fear of, I'm going to be seen as weak. That's a fear. I can't show up as myself because they're going to blah, blah, blah. They're going to steal my work, take credit for my work, and not put me into the team. I mean, whatever. And what a very scary place that would be if that's the case. So while the employee is the one that says, I'm afraid, I don't want to be seen as weak, we need to change that. We need to change whatever is going on in the workplace, that people would see that action, that person is weak. They would see that showing up as your authentic self is weak. There's just nothing wrong with that. And I often say, who are you when you go home and your kids run up to you and you're hanging out with your footballers, or, you're chatting with your best friend online? Who are you? You're probably pretty happy. You're probably pretty much your authentic self. You're pretty consistent the way you show up. What blocks us from doing that at work? Society, over generations, have created this embodiment of work as like evil. Work as like, well, don't show up as your real self because they'll eat you alive. We have to change that, because there's nothing weak in terms of, it's not, I can go on and on and on. It's just not weak. And so rather than spending so much time changing the person who says, like, I'm afraid, we got to do that. You have to go to where the mass of fear is, the mass of toxicity, the mass where people are like, oh, I'm going to eat him alive. Oh, I'm going to take her work. Oh, I'm going to take credit for that. That's where I would spend my time, is fixing this culture so that this person and everyone else like him or her starts to feel more relaxed, more at ease, like they actually have a place
Mm,
where they can be themselves so they can get busy and do the work. All of
mm,
that, you said it earlier, like it's very exhausting. It's very, very exhausting coming in and just doing the work like you're a robot. It will end up backfiring in some way, shape, or form, I believe, in emotional health or physical health.
it it does. Even if you're not attached to the workplace and your motivation isn't to improve the workplace, my loyalty isn't with that boss, he's not a good person for me. Changing it from within yourself in the first place allows you to come back home to those that you love in a lot better emotional state in the first place.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't we start from ourselves and create more environment like that? Because we're spending 40, 50, 60 hours in the workplaces. If that drains me, we got to do something, because I just want to enjoy the best version of myself when I come back home, when I meet my wife, my kids, my friends, and whoever is deep to you guys. So even from that perspective, it's what start changing it, because it's at the end of the day, it's our emotional well-being at stake here, and we can only improve everyone else's at the same time.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Which leads me to something else with you, Claude. Now, I've met you a few times already, and one thing that was very clear for me is that what you're talking about on social media and what your life purpose is really aligned with who you are. That's how you show up. And one thing, the thing that impressed me the most when I met with you, and look, you fly away from New York to London. I'm not even a VaynerMedia employee. You've invited me to the office and you met with me, you sat with me, had a coffee with me. And I knew you're going back to work again, 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, jet lagged. But I felt that you are with me all the time and present. And because it's such an ease to talk to you, I can only imagine how much people are opening up to you. But that brings me to the question, how are you taking care of your own emotional well-being? Because I can imagine that it's taxing in some levels.
Yeah.
And definitely it requires a huge amount of energy to be that person, and especially be that for 4 years. I know you for 3 years, and you, if anything, you just only improved, and you have been in media for 10 years, I believe, right now. And that's how you're showing up as a leader. What is your not secret, but what's your way of taking care of your own emotional well-being?
Yeah. I love the question because it is so incredibly important. And there's a couple things I'll share. The first one is, I love what I do. I would be doing this no matter what, what the job is, no matter what the title is, I would still be doing this. And there's something about holding space and co-creating with people and helping people connect the dots so that they can reignite, they can take off. That feeds me in a massive, massive way. I learned through a lot of different types of training, I have learned to really kind of, I will say, protect my energy. Keep I have a resource, a well that I keep on pouring into. Now, some days I really do get worn out. Some conversations take more of my energy. So a couple different ways. One, I get so much joy and happiness playing with my little girl, who's almost 2.5. And, when I'm with her, you get that oxytocin rush. I feel very warm and very loved, and I play a lot. I'm a real person. That feeds me for sure. Cooking, music, these types of things allow me to just kind of, not shut down, but I can just kind of chill. I'm not thinking about anything when I'm cooking. I'm really not. I don't even follow recipes. It's a very creative process for me. So is music, so is listening to music. And so, by the way, is playing with my little girl. When I can just actually, like, there's just waves and waves and waves, real gentle waves. It's kind of corny. Anyway, the other thing is physical activity, getting body work when I can. So yeah, those are the ways. And I listen to podcasts. I do meditations in the evening. I do things that when I have the time, I try to do things that I know are going to take care of me. So like a podcast, meditation in the night, it does take care of me.
Yes, I've heard you talking about energy management, and for the first time I've heard it from you, I thought, that's very interesting, and it does make sense because again, it's one of those things when we've been trained to time management, time management. But if I
Yeah,
look at my own journey, and when you actually use that term energy management, I was like, that makes sense to me because if I really pay attention where my energy is and balance it from there and learn from there, then I know at which point the best version of myself shows up. So here's a quick example. Now it's 6 o'clock p.m. in the UK, and it's not late for me because I'm somebody who works in hospitality. I never go sleep earlier than midnight anyway.
right, right.
However, the 6 o'clock for me means my mental capacity is no longer the same as at the peak time.
Yeah,
The old Raf would go, man up, dude. You're the wrestler. You're the athlete. What you on about? Just carry on. You got to do it. But I've learned I just can't fuel everything with my ego. I just wouldn't be able to show up in the best version of myself. So I had like a 20-minute nap at 4 o'clock just to
oh good.
be that fresh version that I need to be with you right now, just to, so I can enjoy this conversation and give you the best version of myself for yourself. So I really resonate with energy management, and I highly recommend to everyone to really look into your own energy levels and manage it from there rather than from the time perspective.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you took a nap because you knew what you needed, and it gives you a little bit of a reset. You know, walking outside for 5 or 10 minutes in a busy day gives you a reset. Sometimes I get up and I do a power pose.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I get up and I do 10 jumping jacks, you know, because right now we're all hooked to this screen having virtual meetings constantly. So getting up and kind of shaking the energy out is a good way to reset, you know, or like drinking water. There's all different types of tools that I think are at our disposal, but we just need to take a chance and try something.
Yes, we certainly do. And like I've mentioned a while ago, I wouldn't even consider doing it because it's just not. It's not. I wouldn't say manly enough, but it kind of is. It's just you genuinely just grow to believe that you just have to power through. You're there to endure, and you know what, and that those things are for others. Like, you know, we talk a lot about soft skills. It's another thing. Like, soft skills are not for me. I'm the manager. Like, what do you mean soft skills? Like, hard skills is the thing. What do you mean soft skills? So let's just have a quick conversation around the term soft skills, and let's just break some wrong assumptions here as well, because they are super important.
Yes.
How do you feel when people call things like soft skills? It's not for me. How do you engage in the conversation then?
Yeah, I think the first thing is I feel my heart goes out to that person immediately when someone says, "Oh, that's not for me," because it's our birthright to feel. It's our birthright to show kindness, have kindness come to us. It's our birthright to, you know, learn how to regulate our own emotions. You know, these are things that are, you know, our birthright to communicate. And so when a person says like, "That's not for me," it's like, but wait a second, it's exactly for you. To lean in on your intuition, to be more empathetic, you know, to use the emotional intelligence that you were born with. Turn that on. So anyway, you know me, I really don't care for the term soft skills because I also find it, you know, a little bit demeaning. Oh, hard, soft.
Yeah.
Well, everyone wants something hard. You don't want soft muscles, do you?
Exactly.
You want hard muscles. So I find it demoralizing, demeaning for those of us that skew that way. So I like to say, you know, necessary life skills or life skills, you know, or I just use the word emotional intelligence because I'm not going to get into a battle with someone whether or not they're soft or they're necessary life skills, whatever works for people. But again, these skills are for everyone. And anyone can develop them if you feel like you don't really have that muscle yet. Everyone, every single person. There's such a thing as learned optimism. You can learn it. You really can. Just like you can learn how to communicate by observing and listening. So, you know, you can tell, I mean, I am a real optimist. These things, work doesn't have to be, like we were told it was supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
from our parents or our grandparents. It doesn't have to be like that. You know, we're at work all the time now on the screen. You know, it's hard enough breaking away from the screen and taking care of yourself these days because we're all in this collective experience. We're all having the same experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, you know, give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. Try to just get a little bit more real. You know, ask someone what they're watching on TV, or the last time, you know, you cried at a TV advertisement, or, you know,
Mm.
just silly things like that. But so anyway, I went on a long journey there, but I just think soft skills are for everyone, and you can call them whatever you want.
Absolutely, absolutely. Talking about having conversation with your coworkers, what they're doing, what they're watching. I can see there's lovely painting in the back of you, and that traveled all the way from London to
Yeah.
New York, right?
Yes, it did. Angus made that in the London office, and I fell in love with this one and another one. I just love.
Mm.
What I love about the painting is there's so much depth. There's so much depth. It just kind of like continues, like, you know, like space for me.
Mm.
Makes me really happy.
And so something that's really intriguing when I watch, and we hear Gary talks about a lot all the time, but then when you follow folks from VaynerMedia, and I do have quite a few connections on my LinkedIn, I can see they're doing loads of different things. So Angus is just one example who does the painting, and now he's doing podcasting, I notice as well. And other guys as well are encouraged to get things done outside of the VaynerMedia. Isn't that counterintuitive and counterproductive, because you're encouraging your people to do more and to put more on their own plate? What's the thinking behind it?
Well, we encourage people to just be who they are.
Mm.
And you want to have a side hustle, or you want to spend your free time painting, then by all means do it, because that's your creative outlet. And it only helps us because you're getting invigorated doing something that's not in your workday. You know, I mean, we work for an entrepreneur who has tons of side hustles. You know, whether or not he's garage selling baseball cards, you know, talking about NFTs on Clubhouse. I mean, like, he's doing so many things. We encourage people to fill their cup. And if the way you want to fill your cup is you want to paint, you want to go, you know, go to the gym and pump iron, and then, you know, sell your classes online, do it. Do it. It's not taking away from what you're giving us. What you're giving us is, you know, we've made this agreement when you started to work for us, which is, you know, we are going to give you growth, opportunities, at bats, you know, development, the ability to, you know, be on the cutting edge of media, all kinds of things. And you're going to give us your time, your you know, 40-ish hours, and your energy.
Yes.
During those 40-ish hours, whatever you do on that other time, like, it's going to feed you. I hope. I want it to feed you.
It will, and it genuinely does. When we all have something that we like and love, whether it's a gardening, like my wife spent today a whole day in a gardening. For me, it used to be a lot of physical activities. I no longer do it as much, but there's always something we like intrinsically. And I love the fact that you guys are encouraging those your employees to side hustle, which is, again, is one of the things that the old school ways of thinking is, it's you're here, you know, you're here, you almost owned by us, if you will, that mentality sort of thing. You don't do any part-time jobs elsewhere because you're not coming fresh here, like I've been doing 7 days a week at work at some point when I moved to the UK, and the perception is like you're not giving the best yourself when you come to work. You just have to stick to one and be loyal here. So I love, guys, that what you're doing. You've mentioned that when you onboarding someone to your team, you make this agreement and you promise the personal development. And I had some conversation recently with somebody who's building her business about recruitment process. Although I don't work in recruitment, we spoke about the importance of creating this agreement, because then it's easier also to provide feedback in the future as well. But what I'm wondering is, you talk all about kindness and empathy and ROI of that. Is this also part of the language as you interviewing people and also advertising for the jobs?
Yes. You know, in many of our advertisements, the top part of the advertisement starts with you are a
Mm.
you are a inquisitive empath. You are a curious creative that likes to get their hands into Photoshop and
Mm-hmm.
Premiere. We start that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk throughout the job description about what our culture is like.
Mm-hmm.
We're fast paced, we're entrepreneurial, we're
Mm-hmm.
full of possibilities and positivity. You know, you're going to come to this job and feel like, you know, you can champion the Premier Cup. You know, I think in that job description, we're asking people to show up as they are, and we're looking for those types of people that want to come to VaynerMedia because they know that this is going to be the best career choice of their life.
Mm.
Best career choice of their life. And we are going to do everything we possibly can, as long as they communicate with us, to
Yes.
make this the best place ever. There's not, because, you know, because we are an independent advertising agency, because there's one owner.
Yes.
There's so many things we can do. We don't have to go to the shareholders. I just go to Gary.
Yeah.
Whether or not someone wants to, you know, someone's unhappy and they want to shift teams, or they, you know, they want more money. I mean, everything's a conversation. It just requires a conversation. And if
Mm-hmm.
you come into that conversation kind, and if you're honest, you really can't go wrong.
Mm.
You know, I mean, I can't control how the person hears me, but I'm going to hope that because I'm giving it my all, I'm giving them this space. We're creating this generous space together. Again, the co-creation, that we're going to be able to come to some kind of agreement together,
Mm.
whatever that is. Anything is possible when you come from kindness and compassion and humility. I really believe that.
Mm.
Humility is such a big part of it. There's nothing soft about humility. I disagree if someone said that was soft. You know,
Yes.
the coming from an ego place where I'm the best and I'm the smartest, that is just insecurity. If you
Mm-hmm.
are the best and you are the smartest, then just have your actions show that. Let your actions show that. Cool. And then teach other people.
Yes, I'll absolutely agree with that. And for me, the way I try to battle my own ego, and in the past, I was doing a lot of actually damage, Claude, to my employees and co-workers, not intentionally, but because I brought my athlete mindset to the workplace, I
Yeah.
was this force marching forward. And you with me or you move aside, because I just, I'm here to grow. I'm here to do my best job and to keep on moving forward. And if you're with me, I'll help you. But if not, well, then, I keep on going. And without realizing it, I was creating a lot of damage to my employees because I wasn't taking accountability that people are different in the workplace. And I had to learn how to change my mindset to be a bit more humble, a lot more humble with my approach through my thoughts, behavior, and how I'm coming across as well.
Yeah.
It was super. Is that Shalom?
No, we're
Oh, I
good.
thought because you just looked inside, you mentioned she's taking up, so I just make sure that we're not this right here. So no, absolutely. Earlier on, I also mentioned we're going to touch a little bit on feedback, and I couldn't miss that conversation because that's how we've connected. You've messaged me. I know you're a huge fan of radical candor. Could you just share with us how the feedback culture is shaped and looks like at VaynerMedia?
Yeah. Well, we're actually been using a term called kind candor now.
Mm-hmm.
Kind candor is something that Gary really launched within the entire culture very recently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I go back to, if you have conversations that are rooted in kindness and humility, you can't really go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So, and honesty is what I just said. So the kindness is coming forward and create the creation of just like a safe space.
Right.
Kind, pouring your kindness and your empathy, your compassion to this other person. And then the candor is really being able to say very clearly and specifically, these are the things that I've noticed that we might want to tweak. If you become more, you can become more efficient if you do it this way. Or, I think you might want to proofread your reports. Or, listen, we're a very fast-paced organization, and I've noticed that it's taking you additional time to do these steps. What do you think about that? Oh, yeah, it's taking me additional time. I'm new, I'm learning, whatever. What can we do? Or how can we help you to speed up? How can we help you to become more efficient? How can we help you with your calendar? There's so many different things that come into a person's day, and none of us are perfect. So we also have to recognize that kind candor, that feedback, that radical candor is always going to be subjective anyway. And so, okay, it's subjective. I think you need to speed up. That's one person's opinion.
Yeah.
Now, I could do 360. I could understand what your peers are thinking about you. And if the common theme is you need to speed up and become more efficient, then I'm going to say to you, you know what, based on the observations of your peers and me, your manager, I think that you could become more efficient. What's getting in your way? Walk me through your process. Get very specific and clear with this person. So anyway, kind candor. And I just, again, I don't think you can go wrong, but you have to, myself included, I have to strengthen the muscle. I have to strengthen the muscle. And I want to be that type of person that can receive that too.
It's just as important to share it as you're receiving, because you're becoming that role model. And I like the term kind candor, and what you told me, that you creating those expectations right from the get-go very clearly. It's a lot easier to share the feedback because it's connected. It's not new to me that all of a sudden I have to keep up to a certain pace, because it's always have been clear with what it is. But also when you guys get this recruitment right, and you say, this is what we're looking for and this is who you are, it's a lot easier again to share feedback. Now, one thing that I always do is I'm actually using you as an example when I explain the difference between sharing feedback professionally and sharing feedback kind of like from human to human level. Is I always say, look, imagine I just hired someone like Claude, and I understand that empathy is your thing, is your core value, and then your behavior is away from being empathetic. Now, I have two choices. Managers have two choices, and mostly they pick up the first one, which is your behavior is out of line, it's unprofessional, it just cannot happen, we can tolerate it. It's all this language. Or the better version of that, a lot better version, powerful version of that is, look, I remember you've mentioned how empathy is important for you. And in this occasion, you weren't living up to your own personal value, and more that you're walking away from your core values on this occasion. It's a completely different conversation all of a sudden.
Cool. That's very cool, because you're literally giving that person a gift in such a way that, how can you deny that? That's exactly right. I love that. That's very, very cool. Yeah, because you want to remind people of who they are if you feel as though they've stepped away from that, and encourage them to get back there, because that's where their strength is. My strength is empathy. If you saw me leaning away from empathy, then I'm not going to be as strong. That's a really good point, Rath. That's very cool.
And if we then bring together what you guys do in terms of, hey, you can side hustle, you can work towards this goal, then all of a sudden feedback becomes all about you. You're the primary beneficent. It's not my job anymore to like right at the back, what we've mentioned is the moral responsibility. It's no longer the manager shares the job to the employee. It's just, hey, look, I see you, I hear you, I know that empathy is important to you. I know you're on this mission to, unlock this emotional optimism in all of us, and that is distracting you from it.
Yeah.
I'm not helping my employee. I'm helping you going towards your life purpose, life mission, right? And it's the conversation. Just now we have this candor here as well, and right in action.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it would open me up immediately. Like, oh yeah, no wait, I want to get back in gear. Yeah, cool. I'm gonna use that.
I'm curious now. You mentioned Shalom is 2.5. How did that? If at all change your leadership style, or how that influenced you as a leader in the workplace?
Yes. I would say two or three major ways, and in no particular order. I
Mm-hmm.
had to become better at prioritizing myself,
Mm-hmm.
time, my energy. I had to know what are the important things for me to do by the end of the day when it's time to give her dinner and give her a bath, because I don't want to miss that.
Mm-hmm.
So, prioritization is really important for me. And I have to remind myself the things I say yes to are
Mm-hmm.
very important to me. And if I say no, it's not because they're not important or I don't care. It's that, like, they don't take priority. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, as a real empathetic person, I learned that I knew nothing about what parents go through in the workplace.
Mm.
I knew nothing about what it's like to get a kid dressed and the
Mm.
struggle that is to have them eat before you need to get online, or, I mean, taking a kid to daycare and, dropping them off before you start your day when pre-COVID times, or, what it's like when you're just, your kid gets sick and you have to run to the doctor in the middle of the day.
Mm.
That I really did not know. And I know now, and
Mm.
I definitely lean in a lot more now on working parents. That was really
The
huge. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say the question that you asked me earlier about refueling myself
Mhm.
is really important, because I have a priority now. As much as I love what I do, and I love it, and I love what I do for work, I I love my daughter more.
We got to bring that energy back home, and we've got to share with people. And which kind of reminds me, I heard you saying once about feedback, that withholding feedback is to manipulate with people's growth. And I love that quote, but I added a sentence, and I always now say that withdrawing, withholding feedback is to manipulate with people's growth, but also emotional well-being as well at the same time, right? Because you just keep people in the dark. And if I keep my employee in the dark, then how they coming back home to those that they love? If I'm coming back home exhausted and I can't give the best version of myself to my kids and my partner, then but by withholding that feedback, I'm creating the same scenario, the same circumstances for someone else that is next to me, and
So
we
true.
don't want that, and we shouldn't be doing it.
I love that. Yeah, it is so true. Emotional health right now is on the forefront because we
Mm,
pay attention to it for so long. We never talked about it in the workplace. Never, ever, ever. And it's still taboo in some cases to talk about it, but it's really necessary. And I'm
mm,
not saying it's necessary to, pour your whole heart out and become a puddle every single day. You don't want to do that. And we're not therapists, but telling people, being able to express what's going on and potential anxieties that you have, or that you're not sleeping well, or that you're sleeping great.
mm.
You started to meditate, or you go running, or whatever. We want to know these things because they affect how you show up every single day.
Yes, and for time being, I think it's even more important to talk about it and ask as a leader, as a manager, those questions, because in the workplace, you may be good at sensing that emotional temperature. You see someone for a few hours, you can gauge, you can see things. Now it's a few hours a day on the screen. Quite often, loads of small icons on the screen. It's a lot more harder to actually sense what's going on the other end. And we don't want that. We don't want to be in this position when we discredit or completely miss the fact that you are the partner. I know Shalom is having a nap now, and you know what? I'm grateful that she's actually allowed us to get through all of it
No,
without
no.
distractions. So that's incredible. But we have to be mindful about those things. Right? We can't just saying, yeah, no, I'm at work. I'll do whatever it takes, because it just isn't. As you mentioned, as a parent, it's totally different. I'm always great for how my wife supported me with the kids as well. And I always say, we as a man, we just we have no right to complain, because we just don't know how much hard work that really is. If you think you're working hard because you're bringing money home, no, my friend, you haven't experienced everything yet. That's just that. on the side note. So
Very true.
the very last question I always like to ask, and I'm curious actually to hear what your answer is. Who is the best coach-like leader that you worked for, Claude?
Gary.
Gary.
Yeah. Gary's, I think in terms of what the kind of coaching and the kind of communication that I need,
Mm-hmm.
he is for me, because he comes at it from an understanding of human behavior,
Mm-hmm.
real kind of deep gut knowledge, and
Mm-hmm.
he's very clear.
Mm-hmm.
So you just can take it. And if I have a question, then I say, "What do you mean by that?" But for me, I mean, he's a phenomenal coach, mentor, boss,
Mm-hmm.
friend. I learn so much from him every day, every conversation. Like I can tell you that every conversation I have with him, I walk away like with some kind of aha,
Mm.
you know, and the aha opens up the next conversation I need to have. That's a little bit of a nugget. That's just like an opening where I can step in now a little clearer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's fantastic. And I've had some other great coaches and bosses in my life too, in years gone by, that I think they were very strong and yet very authentic and in touch with their feelings. Two females, just incredible leaders that I think in many ways took me under their wings, probably without even them knowing it. But I learned quite a bit from them in my earlier years, in my 30s.
Wow, that's incredible. I always like to listen to the stories. What makes those great coach-like leaders? Because from my experience, I wish we all had great coach-like leaders all the time. It shouldn't be just by luck. I've been fortunate to have just one, but one was enough to change my life.
Right.
And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, just to make sure that more managers are coach-like leaders, because then we are unlocking the potential in other people. And
Yeah.
to put it simply, we're just making this world a better place just because of that. That's my belief.
I agree, and thank you for making this world a better place by having this podcast and having people like me on to share our point of view and some of our beliefs and philosophies, and for doing the work that you do.
Thank you. I truly appreciate, Claude, for taking your time out of your Saturday and sharing it with me and my listeners. Now, I know that I've connected mainly with you on LinkedIn. I know you're on Instagram, Facebook. You've got your own podcast and small podcast as well, and page. Where would be the best place and where we can learn more about you and from you? And how can we learn more about emotional optimism?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, for sure. My website, so claudesilver.com, and LinkedIn or my podcast, the Silver Lining Podcast, is probably where you get more of me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you. And anyone that writes, I absolutely write back. It might take me a little bit of time, but I love hearing from people. I really do.
So let me just wrap it up this episode, because can't really remember if I actually mentioned it to you. But when I for the first time met you in London, it was 3 years ago. There is one thing that's gonna stick with me for life now as a lesson, that you are never too busy for an act of kindness. So I traveled down to London. I'm not part of VaynerMedia. You had this coffee with me, and I know you were jet lagged, super busy, and you had an entire team to still meet. And remember Gary was texting you as well. You're in London, you got to do your job over there. And yet I was going back home, sitting waiting for my bus, and you still took your time to post it on LinkedIn. And I sat there with so many different emotions, but the main one that I walked away from is like, there is no excuse not being kind and taking your time out of your busy schedule. You may think you're busy, you're not. Like, if Claude had a time to do that for someone who you just met, like literally just for a coffee, and then wow, this is the most important part that I've learned from you, Claude. So thank you very much. It genuinely serves me as a life lesson moving forward. I always go back to that moment. The moment that I've seen that post on LinkedIn, I can't put it into the words, but that is a driver force behind a lot of what I do and how I try to pay it forward and make sure that I take my time.
Thank you very much. That gave me the chills, and that means a lot to me. Thank you.
Right then. Thank you very much, Claude, for today. I really appreciate you. Guys, this is going to also be a podcast episode at some point. And please, please connect with Claude and share consumer content, because there's so much gold, so much value that I can't even describe in words. What difference does it make in our leadership life and personal lives as well? So thank you very much, guys.